about the law of supply. First, we're going to talk about who suppliers are. Suppliers are the people who sell or make available the goods and services that we purchase. So let's say that we were looking to purchase a baseball glove. Mitsuno might be one of the brands, or Rawlings would be another brand that tends to make baseball gloves. Maybe you're looking for some rolls, crescent rolls, or cinnamon buns, things like that that you want to make at home, and Pillsbury would be a company that supplies those things. You might want to purchase a new car. A company like General Motors or Toyota would be the ones that are going to supply or make available those cars for us. So what is supply? Supply in general is just how much of a good or service the suppliers or the producers are willing and able to sell at a particular price. But notice that they have a limit usually on what they are willing to sell. If you look at the flash sale example, you'll notice that there's a big ad saying it's a flash sale, they have save up to 50% off, but notice kind of in that light gray, smaller print, it says select items. And that's because, probably their most popular items, they're not going to have 50% off. But some things that they have more of, things that they aren't selling, they're willing to kind of cut the price to make some money back. Also take a look at the Coke products. You can get a 20-pack of Coke for $5 each. But notice, again, the smaller fine print says that there's a limit of 3. The supplier is only willing to sell up to 3 per customer because they're going to be losing a little bit of their profit by selling it at $5 and not at a higher price. So they're not willing to sell as many as anybody wants to buy, but only up to 3. So what is a supply curve? A supply curve is a curve that shows the quantity or how much of a product the suppliers, the sellers or producers, would be willing to sell at a particular price. The supply curve kind of runs opposite of the demand curve. The supply curve starts in the lower left corner and goes up to the right. When prices are low, sellers don't want to sell as many because they can lose their profits. They're not going to make as much money off of the sale because they've lowered the price. But when prices are high, they want to sell more of their product because they're earning a higher profit because they're getting more money than they would at normal costs. So let's look at the law of supply. Just like we looked at the law of demand, we watched our thumbs. Watch the thumbs in the law of supply. As the price of a good or service increases, the supply for that good or service increases. In other words, as the price goes up, I'm the supplier and I'm going to increase however many I want to sell because the higher the price, the more money I make. But as the price of a good or service decreases, the supply for that good or service decreases. Again, if the price goes down as the supplier, I'm not going to make as much of a profit, so I'm going to sell fewer at that lower price. So again, our thumbs are the same in supply. So supply begins with an S, and your thumbs are the same, which S is the beginning of same. So remember the law of demand, our thumbs are different, D for different. Law of supply, our thumbs are the same, S for same. There are some factors that will affect the supply and the decisions that a supplier makes. First, they have to look at the cost of production. How much is it going to cost them to produce and sell the product? They need to take a look at the raw materials that they even have available to them, and then they have to determine, okay, how much does it cost to purchase those materials that we have available? Do I need to purchase additional materials from somewhere else and have them shipped here? That's all going to cost money. On top of that, I have to have a facility where I can make my product. I may have to pay rent, or I might own the building and have to pay a mortgage on it. I also have to pay all of my workers, including myself. It is important as an entrepreneur to bring in a salary because you need to pay yourself for the work that you do in order to keep the business running. And then finally, you have to think about delivery. You need to deliver your product either directly to the consumer, or you may need to take it to a secondary supplier and somebody who is going to sell it in their store. But you need to arrange for those deliveries. So all of those costs need to be a part of the cost that you sell your product at. And so you have to determine if it is going to be worthwhile for you to sell that, because will consumers buy it at the price that you need to sell it at to cover your costs and, like for our next one, have a bit of a profit. Suppliers are also interested in the profit that they're going to make. They need to make ends meet. Ends meet is covering all of their expenses. On top of that, they have to make a little bit more for their profit. If they are not able to make a profit, then their business will not continue to thrive and grow. They won't be able to expand, and if they have a hardship like what we're going through right now in our society, they would not be able to withstand that hardship, and they probably would go out of business. So it's important for them to determine if they can sell that product at a price that will not only cover their costs, but also give them the desired profit that they want. Another factor that they look at is technology. Sometimes there is a better way, or some other manufacturer has a better way to manufacture something that would make it faster or less costly. So let's take, for instance, you made statues. I could hire some very skilled workers who are good at carving wood statues, but it's going to take them a longer period of time to do that by hand. If I could program that same statue into a 3D printer, I could probably crank out a whole lot more of those statues and sell more statues to cover my cost. But there is a little bit to be said about the quality of a handmade product over something that is mass-produced. It all depends on the consumers and who are your target audience. One other factor that they will talk about or think about is opportunity cost. Now, we think about opportunity cost, and a lot of times we think of that as going with the consumer because it's a decision, it's a choice that you make. What are you going to give up in order to have something else? But suppliers also have to deal with opportunity cost. They have to make decisions as well. They may have access to certain types of materials, but what is the best way for them to use those materials and those resources? So let's say they have raw wood that they could use, easy access to it. They have to choose how to use that. They could consider making pencils. Pencils are fairly simple to make as long as they have the resources that they need to make it. They could make those pencils. They're not very expensive, so they'd have to sell a lot of pencils. But with the wood that they have, they could make a lot of pencils. So that could be a possibility. They would have to decide maybe instead to make cabins. Maybe they want to use that wood to make some cabins, and people would love to either purchase those cabins or maybe rent those cabins to go and stay like in a park or something. If they're going to do that, we have to consider the fact that that's going to be a much larger expense. And do I have the people who are going to be able to purchase that kind of a product or want to purchase that kind of a product in the area that I plan on building them? And then we could also look at making paper. Paper is another one of those consumable types of products, just like pencils. And a lot of people use paper in a lot of different ways. Paper can be used for writing on with pencils. Paper can be used for printing in a printer. So there's a lot of ways that we could do that. So even though paper and pencils are both a cheaper product to make than the cabin, if I wanted to go that route, I might have to decide between those two which one is the better choice there. But that's all something that a supplier has to determine. Is there a desire for these products in our area? Will people even want to buy those kinds of things that I can make? So to wrap this up, suppliers are the people who make or sell goods and services in a market. Okay, suppliers also affect the supply. They decide how much of a good or service they're going to be willing and able to sell at different prices. Remember, they have to cover their bare minimum costs in order to keep their business alive. Now, think about your thumbs. S is the same as the price increases, the supply increases. And as the price decreases, the supply decreases. As prices increase, I'm going to make a greater profit, so I want to sell more. As prices decrease, I am going to make less of a profit, so I don't want to sell as many at that price. I'd prefer to sell at a higher price. But I have to keep in mind that these laws, both the law of demand and the law of supply, are based on how price will affect the supply and how price will affect the demand. There are also several factors that influence what suppliers make and whether or not they're going to make the products they make. And those things are going to consist of things like the cost of production, the profit that they will make, any technology that will make their job easier, or another company can make it more or make it faster or cheaper. And then also, finally, they have some opportunity costs, some decisions to make on what is the best product for them to make. All right, we're going to practice some of this tomorrow. Remember to practice your thumbs, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.